It's a gateway to crime. It's a gateway to addiction.
You could make the same claims about alcohol because it is such a popular drug. Correlation again.
Well, you can correlate it any way you want.
Roger Morgan is an anti-drug activist determined to stop marijuana legalization in California. He's spearheading the Stop Pot 2016 campaign, which sets him and his group up as the main opponents of the marijuana legalization initiative championed by the likes of Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom and Napster founder Sean Parker. Morgan sat down with us to talk about his initiative, the Safe and Drug-Free Community Act, which aims to keep commercial marijuana illegal and to more heavily regulate the state's medical marijuana.
Roger Morgan, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Public opinion since at least 2013 has turned against marijuana prohibition. How do you expect to contend with that, especially in California?
You know, I'm not sure that it has changed dramatically. The other guys have a lot of control over the media.
But there's public opinion polling that has shown that more than 50% of the public wants to legalize marijuana nationwide.
Yeah. We fought the same battle with Prop 19. Public opinion polls showed that people favored it, but when we finally got to the polls, the result was different.
What would the Safe and Drug-Free Community Act do? Could you summarize the initiative?
Number one, it would preserve the intent of 215 to make marijuana available for the chronically ill, for whom it was really intended. I'm not sure that the benefits outweigh the harms, but so that we don't have to contend with that issue, I'm saying we'll keep it. But what it does do is eliminate the abuses that we've encountered in 19 years of no regulations. It would ban privately owned cultivation sites and dispensaries. The dispensaries are nothing more than retail drug dealers with a storefront.
So you want to keep medical marijuana legal, but you want the state to run all of the dispensaries and cultivate all the marijuana. Why would we want the government growing and selling pot instead
in an
of
ideal
private
world,
then?
In an ideal world, we wouldn't. But the idea is that if we must have it, if the government has one cultivation site, it doesn't suck up all the water in our drought. You know, a plant consumes 6 gallons of water per day per plant.
It seems like if you were bringing it above board, you'd have legitimate people growing it just like they grow any other crop, and the water issues and so forth would be dealt with the exact same way. Isn't that true?
I don't think so. I don't know of any plant that consumes the amount of water that marijuana does, number one. But secondly, you have to remember this is a dangerous drug. It inflicts brain damage on anybody less than 25 years old. Permanent brain damage.
The legalization initiative, of course, is only for adults 21 and over. So does talking about what it does to minors, is that really a fair discussion to have?
They're not talking about getting rid of the medical marijuana mess that we already have, and that's 18 and over. Mm-hmm. So if you're, it's almost become a rite of passage to be 18 years old, get a pot doctor's recommendation for 20 or 30 bucks, and then you can buy all the pot you want for a year. When kids think there's no harm to marijuana, more kids use it. It's the gateway to other drugs that kill by overdose, like heroin.
Saying that marijuana is a gateway drug is a myth. Lots of people who use harder drugs have used marijuana, but the same is true, again, of alcohol. It's a correlation, not a causation necessarily. There's no evidence that using marijuana is what led to the harder drugs.
Zach, there's a lot of evidence to that. I know alcohol and tobacco are gateways to a lifestyle where they use drugs, but almost everybody that has gone on to other drugs started with marijuana. Now there's recent indications that from NIDA, National Institute of Drug Addiction, that 70% start with marijuana. If you talk to anybody that's dealt with addiction in the prisons or the rehab system, they'll tell you everybody started with marijuana.
I'm glad you brought up NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, because they themselves have said the evidence regarding brain function and marijuana is mixed at best. And this is the government agency that is supposed to study the harms of drugs.
NIDA was involved in a long-term study in New Zealand of over 1,000 people that went from adolescence to age 38, and they found a loss of IQ of up to 8 points.
Again, it could be correlation and not causation.
Yeah, that's the common phrase, correlation, not causation. I just tell you that having been doing this for 20 years, I probably studied more research than most people on earth about marijuana. It's a gateway to crime. It's a gateway to addiction. I lived with addiction in my family for 20 years. 2 kids that started at 12 and 14.
Again, to say that it's a gateway to crime or a gateway to addiction, it could make the same claims about alcohol because it is such a popular drug. It's there in so many cases of people who are arrested.
Yeah.
Correlation again.
Well, you can correlate it any way you want, but you look at driving deaths. They have doubled in California, Washington, Colorado because of marijuana impairment. And the number of deaths because of that are almost on a par or maybe have exceeded alcohol-related DUIs at this point.
Colorado, if you look at their highway traffic fatalities since the state started selling marijuana, they're actually at an all-time low in terms of the average. So you would expect to see a big spike in highway fatalities if the introduction of more marijuana was causing people to drive more erratically, would you not?
I'm just going to tell you that all the studies that everybody has done indicate that marijuana it doesn't make you a safer driver.
The National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration actually studied this question of driving on marijuana, and they found that there's no significantly elevated traffic risk for someone on marijuana. So saying that it's causing more accidents is a dubious claim.
Zach, I didn't invent any of this, and you can believe what you want to believe, but we work with a guy named Al Crancer, who is retired from the National Highway Traffic Safety Board, and we've been working with NIDA and another pharmacist named Phil Drum, whose sister was killed by a marijuana-impaired driver in Washington. The question is, it's very difficult to come up with a blood alcohol content equivalent of alcohol.
Nobody wants people who are intoxicated under any circumstances to be getting behind the wheel of a car. It's just a matter of how do you measure it? How do you measure it with alcohol? It's a little bit different with marijuana. And that's built into the Newsom-Parker law. So isn't that a positive thing?
The problem is, or if they're in an accident, it takes 3 or 4 hours before you take the test. In most cases, the marijuana has flushed itself out of the system, out of the blood. Didn't test the brain.
How do you justify the massive use of public resources that go towards enforcing the laws against this drug?
Well, let me tell you that what hasn't been publicized widely is that almost all of the mass murders that we've had in recent years, the person has been a heavy marijuana user, because it changes the brain. If you look at the Tucson shooting, Aurora, Paris recently, the guy was a complete stoner, according to his ex-girlfriend. Even the radical Islams that are doing it, that's how they change the motivation of younger people as they give them marijuana.
So marijuana is causing America's mass shootings and Europe's as well.
It is a major factor in it, and it is a causal factor, not a correlated factor. It's a causal factor in mental illness.
And how exactly have scientists proven that marijuana causes mental illness and causes people to snap and go shoot up a church or a coffee shop? Again,
there's thousands of studies that have shown this and a lot of brain scan technology.
So you're saying they've isolated the changes in the brain that have caused someone to go shoot up a church?
Yes, I'm saying they have psychotic breaks that have
caused by marijuana.
Caused by marijuana. Okay. You don't believe it, but I'm just telling.
Okay.
Okay. Every scientific research project ends with, we need to study this further. So I would tell you the same thing.
You and I obviously have disagreements in terms of what the science says about the actual known harms of marijuana. We've had it illegal for 40 plus years. It's just as popular as ever. From a practical standpoint, is keeping it illegal really the best way to reduce the harms that can come from this drug?
Yes. Keeping it illegal and enforcing the law is what has to happen.
So we need more resources going to the DEA and kind of amp up the war on drugs.
We got supply. We've spent 40 years and $1 trillion trying to interdict the supply. We're not going to do it. What's missing is that the government has never had the will or the courage or the wisdom to do what works to prevent the disease. And what you have to do today to do that, you've got to have education.
You can educate without making something illegal, though.
You can educate without making it legal or illegal. You have to educate.
To educate people and get the word out, you don't have to make something illegal. You can just make your case like you are to me and say, make up your own mind. You don't need to bring in the power of the state and say,
Oh, okay,
we're going to arrest you and put you in jail.
Let's just talk about that. You're right. Parents and all the groups I've talked to, parents particularly, are unaware of the harms that marijuana impacts on the brain. Parents need to know, either way they vote for this, marijuana can destroy this country. If we continue to destroy the brains of our young people and allow the devastation of our natural forests, neither have a future, nor do we as a nation.
Roger Morgan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, my friend.
For Reason TV, I'm Zach Weissmueller.